right. Welcome back, everybody, to our latest episode of The Nest. We have had a packed weekend of sports news, which include the NBA Finals tied at 2 games apiece between the Celtics and the Warriors. And that will actually be the focus of today's episode in this video. And joining me for today's episode are Anirban Chakraborty, Raghuram Reddy, and Rohan Venkatesh. How are you all doing?
Good to be here as always, man. I would have looked for a better result last night, but we're in a best of 3, and I was kind of predicting that it was going to be a tight series, and we're headed back to the Bay, and then it's going to come back for a Game 6 in Boston. So we're going to see how that's going to go. So I'm wishing the Celtics all the best here, but we'll see how it goes from here.
Yeah, thanks for having us again. Lots to talk about. Very exciting series going on. Doesn't always go our way, but I'm still looking forward to talk about it, including the result we had yesterday, which of course was disappointing.
Echoing exactly what Anirban said, very interesting series, tied 2-2, and if not a sweep 4-0, one of those Boeing series. And I'm looking forward to talking about this and seeing Golden State come out with the dub.
Yeah, so
it's always good to have a dissenter on here.
Yeah, so let's just begin. So basically we had 2 games this week, right? Game 3, the Celtics win 116-100. Game 4 last night, the Warriors win 107-97. So before we talk about Game 4, I did want to also talk about Game 3 a bit because, I mean, as much as we complain about everything that went wrong in Game 4, they had a good Game 3 win. I mean, Jaylen Brown, 27 points, 9 of 16 shooting. Jayson Tatum, 26 points, 9 of 23 shooting. Marcus Smart, 24 points, 8 of 17 shooting. So they did pretty well in Game 3. And in Game 3, Steph Curry had 31 points, Klay Thompson with 25 points, and Andrew Wiggins with 18 points. So overall, I thought the Celtics had a good game plan in Game 3. I mean, when Steph Curry hit that 3 in the third quarter to give the Warriors a 1-point lead, Marcus Smart hit a huge 3-pointer afterward to give the Celtics a lead they would hold on for the rest of that game. In the fourth quarter, they outscored Golden State 23-11. So I liked how they played in Game 3. And honestly, even in Game 4, which we'll talk about now, Jaylen Brown had 21 points, Jayson Tatum had 23 points, Marcus Smart had 18 points. The big difference was Steph Curry had 43 points, 7 of 14 on 3. So I think overall, when I looked back at the box score and actually looked at the highlights, the statistics, I think one thing that really kind of stood out was the Celtics were really kind of in this game pretty late, like in the fourth quarter. They had a 5-point lead with 7 minutes to go. And this time they actually withstood that third quarter surge that the Warriors have usually in the other 3 games. So they did a good job, I thought, overall. It's just in the last 6 minutes or so, they couldn't shoot at all. That was their big problem. It wasn't Steph Curry taking over the game in that context because Klay Thompson actually was the one who hit the 3 that gave the Warriors the lead for that series. So that's really what's kind of stood out to me. But I'm kind of curious what you all have to say because I feel when I look back at this was a game the Celtics definitely should have probably been able to win. It's just they couldn't hit a shot when it mattered late. It kind of reminded me of some of their previous struggles against Miami, against Milwaukee early on. And I mean, both times they were able to kind of rebound from that. So maybe when I look at it in that context, I think the Celtics still have a good chance, or a chance at least, to win the series. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to agree, and I'm going to both agree and disagree with that. I mean, Steph Curry getting 43 points in the last game, that was just an insane performance, right? And what I was saying at the beginning of the series was that the key for the Celtics was to basically shut down their superstars, Steph Curry being the main one. Of course, Klay Thompson also in there. But I would say that the Celtics are doing a reasonably good job at that. I guess you could say their other star player, if you even call him that, is Draymond Green, but he really hasn't really been having a great series. But I would say that the main difference between Game 3 and Game 4 is that our big 3, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, they were all able to put up decent performances, if not great performances, at least decent performances. And in Game 4 they were okay throughout the first 3 quarters, and then the offense just kind of fell flat. And then in the last 5 minutes of the game or so, that offense I think only scored 3 points or something really, it just fell off a cliff or something like that. So I guess it's a combination of many factors, but I would say that some of this would have to be credit to Steph Curry and credit to Steve Kerr and how he's able to rally that team after that Game 3 loss. And I honestly have to give a lot of credit to Golden State for their win in Game 4. yeah, the Celtics could have played better, and there were a lot of open shots that they missed in the fourth quarter, and I think a lot of those wounds were self-inflicted. But I think it would be wrong to not give the Warriors credit here.
Yeah, I don't think anyone. I'm sure no one's going to take away from Steph Curry's performance with like 43 points, 10 rebounds. I mean, just really a breathtaking performance, unfortunately, that we had to watch. And I think for me, when I look at the difference between game 3 and game 4, I just feel like in game 4 we again kind of just saw that I I don't really know if like panic's the right word for it, but I feel like there are just moments in various losses throughout the playoffs, like not just, I mean, I guess you could say game 4, especially the last like minute, which Rohan mentioned, where it just feels like the Celtics kind of hit the panic button, and you know they were down by like 3 points, like 97 to 94, and just proceeded to miss like 6 or 7 3 points, and yeah, a few of them were open shots like Al Horford's that really you would hope that they'd make them, but other ones too, they were kind of contested. They were kind of rush shots, or just it just kind of made you think like that you've seen this before, that you've seen this, that when the Celtics were down in the first half of the season, that they just kind of went ISO mode and just started trying to hit threes to come back. Except in this case, it was like they were only down by 3 points or 6 points, and it's just something. It's just something that's just so striking, and I feel like it just surfaces every now and then, especially in our playoff losses. And you know, in those situations, if we just gone for a couple of twos or tried to really create something in the paint with our more physical play, because the Golden State hasn't really had too much to answer us in the paint compared to like the 3-point shot, I think this could have been a really different outcome.
And I would definitely have to say that Golden State seems to be very reliant on the three. I mean, both Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, both great 3-point shooters. And I think the Celtics sometimes make the mistake of getting intimidated by that. And they try to replicate it every single time. And that kind of forces them to take all these bad shots. And I mean, to add to what you said about the Celtics just kind of hitting the panic button, the Celtics they just took a lot of bad shots, right? Late in that fourth quarter. And there were a lot of missed threes, right? That's not to say that they would have made them if they had just been a little bit more patient and really gone into the paint. But I think the worst thing you can do in situations like that, where you're kind of going down late in the game, is to just try to go for heroics, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, you look like a genius if it works, but on the flip side, you look like a total idiot if it doesn't. And unfortunately, that's kind of what the Celtics did last night.
Yeah, I mean, I'd also like to point out, like in the fourth quarter, in the fourth quarter, is 91-86 with 6:46. And there's just one possession that I remember now at the time, like sort of at the time I was thinking it could be pretty bad. And it turned out to sort of just kind of confirm what ended up happening. But at 6:46, it was a 5-point lead. Jason Tatum had a shot clock violation with like 6:46 remaining. And at the time, I was like kind of sort of lamenting that opportunity, because this was a chance to maybe get 2 points at least, make it a 7-point game, and versus a 5-point game. But it just seemed like sort of from that point on, with 6:46 remaining, they just never were able to hit their groove at the end. Like, I mean, Al Horford hit that 1-3 when it was 100-94 to make it 100-97. But besides that, like, I felt like the Celtics just kind of really struggled to get the appropriate shot, and they really kind of were too desperate for the three, because when it was 97-94, there was still 3 minutes remaining in the game at that point, and a 2-pointer at that point is actually okay to go for, because there's so much time remaining in the game. So I don't know why they were just forcing themselves to try to hit a 3 when you could have gone for a 2 and probably cut the lead down and then get a stop on the other end. So that was kind of a disappointing turn of events, that I felt the Celtics were just too desperate. They kind of hit the panic button too early, thought that they were needed to hit a 3, when at that point I was okay with a 2. A 2 would have been totally okay, and then you're just down to 1, and you force Golden State now to go back on offense and hit a shot. And so overall, I think there were positives from this game I saw. I think it's just, and like, I mean, at this point, like, the Celtics have shown that they can win on the road too. So, I mean, in a perspective, and in game 5 now, which is on Monday night, I think the Celtics do have a shot to win that game for sure. They haven't lost back-to-back games at all in this playoffs, but at the same time, they're going to have to sort
Also
of
a good
clean up
road
their
team.
mistakes. Yeah, I mean, they won 3 times in Miami, right? Including game 7 and game 5 and game 2 as well. And they also won in Milwaukee too when they had to, in game 6 when they were facing elimination. So I'm not worried about the resilience of this team. It's just sometimes really confusing and puzzling how a team that has shown like so much resilience and mental toughness, just sort of makes these mistakes in these spots when they have a chance to really go up. But I mean, Raghuram, I'm curious to hear your takes on this overall.
I think Boston Celtics kind of got caught up in the whole 3-point game. And when Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, very notable 3-point shooters, start making stuff, they kind of feel the sense to kind of replicate that and do the same thing on the exact opposite end of the court. And one of the things that comes to mind is Steve Kerr actually telling Jordan Poole not to replicate Steph Curry because that's a dangerous game. Because Steph was shooting like 43% from 3-point line at one point, and then Jordan Poole was shooting at 34% at one point in his career. And that's kind of the same thing in terms of teams. Like, you don't want to replicate that shot, force that shot when you don't need to, especially when you have like a 5-point lead. You can take the time, you can maintain any tempo that you want, set that tempo, and force the other team to play at your tempo and really get the offense going rather than taking sloppy threes, missing them, and then going down. And now you don't have that much time left, and all you can do is hope a couple threes go in that are contested. So I think given the Celtics performance, especially in game one, where they do know that they have that resilience, they can come back. There's no need for them to go for like the fancy shots late in the game in the fourth quarter. They can just stick to the basics, the fundamentals, go for screens, off ball movement, and get the open shot, open look, make those points, and it'll add up to winning the game at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I also just want to point out one other thing, because Steph Curry had 43 points last night. However, in the fourth quarter, do you know how many shots Steph Curry made? Not free throws, shots. He made 2 shots in the fourth quarter, a 3-pointer and a 2-pointer in the whole fourth quarter. So that really means the Celtics did a good job kind of withstanding Steph Curry in the fourth quarter. Their own worst enemy was themselves in the fourth quarter. Steph Curry was terrific. I agree with you. Like, I mean, for 3 quarters,
missing a lot of free throws.
Yeah, I mean, they missed free throws, especially when Steve Kerr got the technical, and then Jason Tatum missed the free throw, and then Peyton Pritchard missed a free throw shortly after that. Granted, they were better with their free throws later on, but here's the thing. Steph Curry in the fourth quarter, off his shots, only had 5 points. Off his shots, he did have some free throws at the end that kind of added to his point total. But I also want to emphasize, in the fourth quarter, you actually did a pretty good job on Steph Curry overall. You actually did a pretty good job defensively, like overall in game 4. It was just your offense couldn't deliver when it mattered. That's what really, like, I want to emphasize for game 5.
You have to really think back to like how many times the Celtics were kept to under 100 points. That's a rarity.
Yeah, I mean, I think like overall it's happened twice this series, right? 88 in game 2, and then this one, 97. But like that's the thing. Like I think the Celtics really just sputtered on offense, and I think that's something that is fixable. But Jason Tatum, it's going to probably have to start with him. Like he hasn't really had a great finals overall in 4 games. He did have 23 points, but I think overall, like definitely needs to be more aggressive. And that's going to be one thing. Like Jaylen Brown at this point has been the Celtics' probably most consistent player on offense. So that's something I just sort of want to see, like overall. Like I feel like there were a lot of like kind of things I can kind of look back at, because like I mean it was a 10-point win for the Warriors at the end of the day. But that's really kind of because at the end the Celtics just missed their shots and free throws kind of made the deficit what it is at the end of the day. So I wouldn't really say this was really like a real 10-point loss where the Celtics were thoroughly outplayed. This was a close game where at the end the Celtics just couldn't buy a bucket when it really mattered. So that's hopefully something that this team kind of takes into account for game 5, because they know that they're good enough to win against this team. Like the Warriors at this point, like all of us can agree that these two teams are pretty evenly matched. Maybe Boston probably has a slight advantage in the talent size, and Steph Curry has probably really kind of kept the Warriors in the series based on his outstanding shooting and just how he plays overall. So that's sort of one thing I would look at if I'm the Celtics, that you are definitely still in this. And I mean, it might be a demoralizing loss. I don't think it's really demoralizing, actually, because I was thinking about it. Probably the most demoralizing loss for the Celtics this season, maybe a tie probably between game 6 against Miami when you had a chance to win at home and win the Eastern Conference Finals, or that game 5 against Milwaukee, where they pretty much blew it after Giannis missed the free throw and Bobby Portis put back the layup. for the points. So, I mean, those are probably the two worst losses. And both times the Celtics rebounded pretty like well in the next game. So that's why I'm convinced that this team is resilient enough to do it. It's just some of these mistakes are just things they got to clean up on. And they're sort of running out of time on it. They still have some chances, but that's sort of the thing. Like, I think you still have a good shot of winning the game because Steph Curry, for as brilliant as he was, you did a pretty good job on him in the fourth quarter when it really mattered. It was just your offense sputtered, but not your defense. So that's one thing I just hope they kind of really emphasize in the practice, that you did a pretty good job in the fourth quarter in crunch time. It's just your offense couldn't deliver when it mattered. So that's a different story than simply saying you got scorched by Steph Curry all four quarters, right? The narrative all of a sudden changes now to you actually kind of buckled down on him late, but you need to just kind of focus on finishing your drives and not panicking, right?
Could this also be some credit? Do the Warriors defense also deserve some credit here though? Because
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to take bad shots for nothing, right? A good
Well,
I mean,
defense
there
forces
were
you to
some
do that.
open shots though. Like Marcus Smart missed 2 straight open shots. At that point, I can't credit any defense for when an offense misses open shots, right? Like I can credit a defense when you go right at their face and are constantly hounding it. There were some good possessions by the Warriors. Like for example, when Jaylen Brown had that bad turnover late in the game, that was due to good defense. So I will give the Warriors credit for that. And they did a good job kind of disrupting the rhythm late. But there were also a lot of plays that I can't really give the Warriors defense credit. It just seemed like the Celtics were imposing like bad shots on their own when they were open. Why are you going for the 3 so many times when you have a chance to just get a 2, right? Is that because of the defense at that point? I'm not going to credit the defense for a guy missing open shots. Like I'll never do that for the Celtics either. If Steph Curry is missing open shots, that's not because of Marcus Smart or Robert Williams. That's because Steph Curry missed a shot then, right? It goes both ways.
Yeah, it goes both ways, but also I think we definitely saw some defensive adjustments from the Warriors in this game. I mean, specifically, we all know that the rebounding has been a huge advantage for the Celtics early on in the playoffs and early on in the finals. And in this game, actually, we saw, for example, Kayvon Looney actually got a lot more time. He played 17 minutes in Game 3, and then he played 28 minutes as a center in Game 4 instead of Otto Porter. And Kayvon Looney's a 6'6" player. He ended up getting 11 rebounds for his team, including some pretty big ones in the third quarter. And he was second most in rebounds. And when you kind of look at the story of this game, right, the Celtics had 32 points in the paint. We had 52 points in Game 3. So I think there was definitely some adjustment that was happening from the Warriors defense, because in Game 3 it was pretty obvious that the Celtics were just really steamrolling them when it came to the paint. And I think a lot of people were saying, you have Kayvon Looney, he's a really tall center for your team. The Warriors do not have the height to match certain Celtics players. So I think that is something that we should keep in mind. But I think it's also a missed opportunity because Kayvon Looney didn't really play that much in the fourth quarter either. And at that point, it was almost like the Celtics were still playing like there was some kind of huge center in the middle of the paint. When in reality, that should have probably been the time to attack because they were kind of, I think, relatively smothered. I mean, they had just relatively less success in the paint, and the points tell the story. There's a 20-point difference between Game 3 and Game 4. So we'll have to see what the Celtics can do to adjust that. The good news is, I mean, the Celtics have definitely played, teams with who have battled them in the paint. I mean, Milwaukee was like that too, right? So I think the Celtics kind of need to calibrate and figure that out. But credit where it's due. I think that was a good change brought on by Steve Kerr.
Yeah, I think it'll just be interesting to see what adjustments are made by both sides in Game 5. Like one of the big ones in Game 4, just overall, was Golden State had started this time Otto Porter Jr., who actually only scored 2 points. He actually didn't make a major impact. And actually, it's interesting because 2 of the 5 Warriors starting members, Draymond Green and Otto Porter Jr., both scored 2 points total in this game. So 4 points among 2 of your starters, which is really kind of incredible when you think about it. And that's why Steph Curry had to play extra hard this game, and he was brilliant. So I think it's going to just be interesting to see how Game 5 kind of goes. It's really been a chess match, and at the end of the day, I at the start of the series, I said this was going 7 games. Now, regardless of who we think is going to win Game 7, we knew that this was going to be a long, tenuous series because both teams are very good overall. Like it's obvious. Like these are the 2 best teams in the league at this point. Sorry, Phoenix, you don't deserve that title anymore after what happened against Dallas. But that's the thing. Like I think overall, like these are two of the best teams in the league. So naturally, it's going to be one of those things where we expect a chess match. And now we're at round 5, 2-2. So overall, I mean, as the Celtics, like looking at the perspective of the Celtics, it's like you're still in a good spot overall. Sure, you now and you still have a shot if you win Game 5 to close it out in Game 6. But I think it's just going to be now, like with 3 games remaining total, you really got to zone in on the turnovers, because when the Celtics don't turn it over, that's when they have a really good chance of winning these games.
And even though it's a 2-2 series, I think the mood would have been very different if they lost the first 2, then won the next 2, as opposed to this win-loss pattern.
Yeah, so I don't really believe in momentum here. I mean, after Game 1, we thought the Celtics had a lot of momentum, right? Especially how they came back in the fourth quarter, 40-16, outscoring Golden State. But then Golden State in Game 2 won pretty convincingly. But then the Celtics won Game 3 in a pretty kind of dominant fashion, with a strong fourth quarter.
But it does kind of reinforce the fact that the Celtics don't really tend to do well in close games, right? So
they did okay against Miami late. At the end of the day, they still won the game despite like not really being able.
And I give him credit for that, but I mean, this is
Brooklyn
something that kind of plagued them during the regular
remember?
season.
What about Brooklyn Game 1 when they came back with a buzzer beater? So I mean, I don't know, this whole like close game thing. I mean, they've won 2 big games, close games, and they especially Game 7 against Miami on the road, a close game. Like they were able to still get it done when it mattered, right? So I mean, yeah, sure, you might be able to say that they kind of struggle, but I mean, they are still able to get to this point. Game 5 of the NBA Finals, tied 2-2, right? So, I mean, that's another thing we have to consider, right? Like, it is important, but they're still at this point, right, where they still have a shot to win this whole thing, even with some of these things that can be fixed.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, at the end of the day, close games are when you're just playing another good team, like just statistically, kind of you'd expect the outcome to be around 50-50 or around then. I mean, when you were playing the Bucks, the Heat, and now the Warriors, this has been an even series. And when you get close games, sometimes they go your way, sometimes they go the other way. I mean, that's just what happens. I think when the teams are so evenly matched, at least in their abilities. I don't know, Raghuram, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think they're both pretty evenly matched, as you can see with like the win-loss type of pattern. And I do think it'll go to Game 7 for sure. And I think it's really just gonna have to boil down to like adjustments that each team makes, like defensively and offensively. And I think Jason Tatum has to show out. Like 23 points is good. It's pretty good actually, but we got to see some of those like 40-point games that we've seen him do earlier in the playoffs to really take control and like win.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because I feel like the Celtics are one of those teams where their star. I mean, and of course, I agree with Amartey that Jaylen Brown, I think, has been the biggest performer offensively for the Celtics in the finals. But I mean, Jason Tatum's still really supposed to be our MVP candidate player, and it's just interesting to me that really, I feel like the Celtics are one of the few teams where their biggest star, like their offensive possessions, don't necessarily run through their biggest star. I mean, often I can't tell you how many times I've seen Jason Tatum standing in the corner and Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown's really leading it up, passing around. Sometimes multiple offensive plays go without Jason Tatum really doing anything else except kind of passing it again as part of the chain of passing. So I I feel like that's something that, when we're down by 5 or 6 in the fourth, I really feel like that's the time when Jason Tatum should be the guy who's like, okay, all right, give me the ball. I'm going to make something happen. If it requires it, I'll go to the foul line. I'll draw something. I mean, not with that goal, but making moves that put defenders in those situations. That's very different from, flopping or diving or something. So I think that's something that the Celtics are kind of missing, and that's something maybe that Jason Tatum can think about how he can kind of step into that role more in the latter half of the finals.
Yeah.
Oh, and also just to talk about Draymond Green really quickly, because I think he merits some discussion. He had 9 rebounds this game, so statistically a little better than Game 3, where of course we all know. I mean, 2 points, 4 rebounds, I believe 6 fouls. This game he only had 3 fouls. But I don't know. What do you guys think about him getting benched in the fourth quarter? And I guess he obviously wasn't very happy about it. We all know, Draymond's very passionate about the
I,
game. He always
I think
wants to be playing.
it's just a rational decision, right? I think Steve Kerr has seen the numbers. I think he's seen how his team plays under various circumstances, and he's seen that Draymond Green's been struggling, and he wants to give his team the best chance of winning. I don't think it's personal. I think Steve Kerr is just a great coach, and yeah, it's tough for Draymond Green, but at the end of the day, the role of a coach is to give your team the best chance of winning, and I think Steve Kerr is doing exactly that. And I have a lot of respect for Steve Kerr and I admire him a lot. And this really just been the matchup of two great coaches, Ime Udoka and Steve Kerr. And I don't doubt his judgment here. But at the same time, it is kind of funny to see Draymond Green's reaction to that, though, and the potential internal strife that's developing from that. Whenever there's potential signs of disunity from the opposition, that's always good for the Celtics. But in the grand scheme of things, I think Steve Kerr knew what he was doing, and I think and I think that the Warriors are probably rational to behave that way. And those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of wonder, I sort of do wonder if this will cause any like tension between Draymond Green and the Warriors team, especially in game 5. I mean, so only natural, like for a human, right, to feel this way, especially in such a big moment when he sees that his coach is going with another player at that spot. So that's going to be something to kind of watch for game 5, to see if Draymond tries to be more aggressive, tries to shoot more, which would actually benefit the Celtics a lot because he has not been playing very well. But yeah, it'll be kind of a thing to sort of note. I'm not sure how much of an impact it will make at the end of the day, but it is kind of worth noting that like kind of the pivotal point of these finals now, that Draymond Green is pretty openly dissatisfied with Steve Kerr like benching him. So it is kind of a notable thing, but whether or not it will like result in the Celtics greatly benefiting from it, then I can't really say that. Like, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I mean, Draymond sort of like at the end of the day, like I think near the end, he still had some rebounds, and it seemed like he sort of bought into it at the end of the game. But whether or not this will really help the Celtics win the series at the end, I can't say that. Like, I don't know if it's that much of an impact. Like, I don't think all of a sudden he's going to start taking all of like Steph Curry's shots and go ISO. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, it could probably lead to some tension between him and the team. And if that's the case, then that could hurt the Warriors. I mean, we've seen it before in 2016 when he got suspended in Game 5. For Game 5 of the 2016 finals, when the Warriors, of course, were leading at the time 3-1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, I mean, he got suspended. Cleveland got their momentum back with that win, and then they won that series. And so it really depends. Like, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I guess it is worth noting, but I don't know if it'll make enough of an impact for the Celtics to like win that game because of that. I'm not saying the Celtics can't win in general, but I don't think that's really going to drive who wins the series one way or another, like him getting benched. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens, I guess, going forward. But I mean, I don't think it's really as big of a story as it sounds.
Yeah, I think Steve Kerr made a relatively easy call. I mean, Draymond Green is a 3-time champ, one of the best defenders in the NBA, and he hasn't been playing like that. And Steve Kerr obviously wants to give his team the best chances to win, and he's going to make any coaching decision to make that happen. And I think all players have their off games, and I think one of the things that Draymond Green will have to help him come back to how he should be playing is his mom's tweet. I don't know if y'all saw that, but she called him out basically on Twitter and said, "Who's that? Is that a clone?" Because that's how he's been playing right now. But I think he'll definitely come out of that slump and show up Game 5.
Yeah, I just saw that tweet, and I gotta say, when your mom's saying that to you on Twitter, I mean, it's gotta light a fire in there. So I hope that doesn't, I hope we're not about to see Draymond put in like an all-time Michael Jordan-esque performance for games 5 through 7. So
I mean, he does wear 23, right? So that would be very fitting. All of a sudden, if the Celtics season ended because Draymond Green started dropping 50 points and started making Steph Curry-esque shots. I mean, what a disastrous way for a season to end then. But I don't think, again, like I don't think this is going to really change that much. Like, sure, maybe Draymond Green will post better numbers, but for Draymond Green, better numbers is like 10 points, 11 rebounds, something like that. Okay. So, like, I don't think all of a sudden Draymond's going to start scoring 30, 40 points a game or like 20 points a game. Interesting note, Draymond Green has not scored, I think, over 25 points in a playoff game since Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals. So it's been 6 years since Draymond has had like one of those types of performances. So I think, could we see Draymond Green going back to the Draymond we know, like 10 points, 11 rebounds, being a triple-double threat? Yeah, maybe that's sort of the extent we'll see it. But I don't think all of a sudden he's going to become like a scoring machine, like out of the blue. Like, so yeah, I mean, again, like I don't think this is like as big of a story as people are making it seem. Like he's been playing like pretty well on defense for the most part anyways. It's just sort of getting overlooked because his offense has been so bad. So it's not like all of a sudden like Draymond's been completely unplayable. It's just on offense he's really struggling, but on defense he's still pretty good at what he does. It's just everyone's just sort of noticing the lack of offense he has. So that's sort of just one thing to kind of see like overall. Like I don't think it's going to be as big of a story. Like I think Steve Kerr made the right choice at the end of the day, clearly, to go with a kind of more functioning offense at the time because they needed an offense to wrap that game up, and they got it. So yeah, I mean I don't know. I still don't think it's a major story, but we'll have to see. I guess we'll find out in Game 5 and 6 how much that sort of really influenced Draymond. He's a competitor at the end of the day, so of course he's going to take it as a slight. But again, like it's just I don't know the impact he makes is not going to be the same as the impact of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson or Andrew Wiggins on offense, right? So that's sort of what I have to say on this. Like, I don't think it's as big of a story as people will make it seem. I am like kind of intrigued by the lack of.
Well,
like,
to be fair, we are kind of doing that by talking about it.
Well, I'm saying it's not really a story, right? Like, I think people will naturally get a little excited. Like, oh, I mean, I'm sure it might cause some dysfunction with him and the team, right? Like, if this is sort of happening, an internal conflict. Like, these are the types of things that could hurt. But I just don't know the extent to which it'll really influence the Warriors' season one way or another.
I think Steve Kerr knows what he's doing. I think he's got years of experience and he knows how to manage a team. And it's up to Ime Udoka on the other end to match that.
I do kind of want to present one question. This is sort of more of like a kind of a long-term question. But does this Warriors team, like, does this kind of seem like this season is sort of it for this Warriors core? Like, long-term, like, we kind of, like, I'm just sort of trying to draw parallels. Like, does it sort of seem like this might be kind of the Warriors' last run, like this whole dynasty that they've kind of had? Do you feel that this could kind of be it? Like, this is kind of their last year of sort of getting to the finals before things
usually
change?
when there's talk like that, it's usually wrong. Most of the time it is wrong because
really
we probably heard this like in the 17-18 season, and we probably even heard this like in the 18-19 season once they lost to the Raptors, right?
But they were younger back then. That's different.
Yes, but how much older are they right now?
They're 3 years older. Steph Curry's gonna be 35 next year.
They're 3 years older, which is significant, but they bring experience on their side, and Steph Curry's still able to perform like the Steph Curry of several years ago. So right now,
we're seeing the team around him isn't as strong anymore as it was before.
So right now, I don't see any kind of evidence of aging, at least on Steph Curry's part. Maybe the team around him, sure, but that's something that can be adjusted, right? On an at-need basis, if need be, right? I don't think there's any need to kind of just revamp the whole team, and if this were really a problem, they wouldn't even be here. So I think that discussion right now is very premature.
Well, it's premature, but this is also a talk show, right? So we have to go into premature discussion. So
okay, but all teams are. If you want to have premature discussions, all teams are too old because all teams are going to be too old at some point. So that's
no. But there's a difference between Jason Tatum, who's 24, and Steph Curry, who's 34. Like, there's a difference between that, right?
Sure. You want to have a discussion that's premature by 20 years? Yeah, we'll say Jason Tatum is too old.
When in 20 years we'll be saying Jason Tatum's too old?
Or maybe he's not. Maybe he plays into his 40s. Who knows? I don't know.
Jason Tatum playing into his 40s. Okay.
I don't know. I think I do kind of agree with Rohan in some respect that they did make it to the finals with this team, and they made it to the finals with Klay Thompson not either out for a long time or definitely not 100%. And certainly not really near the, I guess, the heights he hit in like 2016, this whole Splash Brothers kind of era. And at the same time with Draymond Green too, I do kind of get the feeling that we're going to see his playing time just decrease over the next season or two. But I think kind of going back to what Rohan said, I mean, the Golden State Warriors still have a lot of really name value and a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for really talented free agents or young players to go there. I mean, look at the young players they have right now. I mean, Andrew Wiggins is, well, he's not as young, but he's still got like a few years left, definitely, to reach top level. These Jordan Poole is pretty young. They have some pretty talented rookies. Um, so it's, could it be I mean, you could say, I mean, the original core was Harrison Barnes and Andre Iguodala, right? And Andre Iguodala is still playing sometimes, but he's like 37. Harrison Barnes left many years ago. I mean, they still found a way to play. They got Andrew Bogut later on. They got DeMarcus Cousins for a hot minute. I mean, they got Kevin Durant. It's kind of, it's a little difficult to say when a dynasty starts and ends. I guess you could say the one factor here that's really been constant is that Steph Curry has just been a part of everything that they've done. So if you define a dynasty like that, then I'd say it could still go on for a few more years. But if you define it as the Splash Brothers plus Draymond, if you really say Splash Brothers, Draymond, and Steve Kerr, then sure, this might be the last year of all four of them there. Though I would argue, if you're going to make that argument, that Klay Thompson hasn't necessarily been like a, maybe his peak has already kind of passed due to some unfortunate injuries, and same with Draymond. So if that was your argument, then you could argue that already arguably ended like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more saying it like I was sort of looking back at like kind of history, right? Like the Lakers in the late 80s. I mean, they won 3 or 4 championships with Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and in 1988 they beat the Detroit Pistons in 7 games to win the NBA championship. And actually, after that, they made it back to the finals in 1989, played the same Detroit Pistons team. They got swept. And then they made it back 2 years later in 1991, but they lost to the Chicago Bulls, who were led by Michael Jordan. And then after that, it took them 9 years to kind of get back to the finals with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. So that's sort of like kind of what I'm starting to think a little bit. Like, is it possible that this Warriors team is kind of at this, like, because that's what it makes me kind of wonder, sort of like how many more years of like this type of play can we see? Like clearly, like what we're seeing is like while Steph is still great, like the team around him, he's really kind of carrying that team now more than he's probably had to ever in his career. And as he gets older, it's not going to be possible for him to carry that load. Even the great player LeBron James, right?
Yeah,
with
but
the
all
Lakers.
teams have to make adjustments. Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah, so I'm just saying this might be the last time we see Golden State in the finals overall for a while.
No, good teams know how to make adjustments, and Steve Kerr is a great coach, and they have great management. So I think they'll know what.
Well,
to
didn't
do
we say about the Patriots too? With Brady?
Well,
and would you say they were a great team then?
they were a great team, and they're still an okay
Still have
team.
Bill Belichick, right? Who we say is the best coach. So.
And the core of that team with I mean that
Well,
Belichick
to
and
be
Kraft is
fair,
still
in
there.
that case, that would be like if Steph Curry left, though. To be fair, that would be like if Steph Curry left the Golden State Warriors, and then it was just Steve Kerr and then the rest of the team. So it's not exactly apples to apples. I mean, not that any comparison in sports ever is apples to apples, but that one.
But I think comparing basketball players to a QB in football is kind of almost apples to apples, right? Because I mean,
No,
football.
but he's not there anymore. But he left. That's the thing, right? Tom Brady left.
Yeah.
Steph Curry's still there.
Well, what about the
That's
Lakers
why
with
the
LeBron
dynasty-
James, right? The Lakers in 2020 won the championship, right? And then now it's like sort of
Then they fell off a cliff after that.
Yeah, but what do you say? Like LeBron James, as great of a team they had with the talent they had, they still weren't able to kind of like they really struggled the last 2 years, right?
They did. Who knows? Yeah, it's a fair question. Though I would say in the Lakers case, I feel like that really came down to really exceptionally poor team chemistry and team building decisions.
Well,
Like,
team
they're getting-
chemistry, they still had Davis and
but
LeBron,
they know-
right?
I mean,
I-
they brought Russell
but, you know,
Westbrook, which clearly didn't work out.
At
for
the
them.
same time, for a team that's made the finals, calling a short-term peak is not really a bold call. I guess the real question is in the long term, what's going to happen.
I don't know.
Unless you're some
we
kind
should
of
ask
insane team
Raghuram because he saw the great Dirk Nowitzki come and go. So, and the great Kristaps Porzingis. So, Raghuram, what do you think about this talk? Is it premature?
I think we're close to nearing the end, honestly. of the dynasty.
There
just
you
'cause
go.
Steve
Someone else
Kerr,
agrees with me.
But like next season, Rugram, what do you think? Do you think next season that the Warriors would make the finals?
I don't think they will. Just
See,
because
I agree.
there's a lot of other budding teams like Mavs. You got the Bucks if they have their full healthy team.
Wait, do you
and
see
you
the
also-
Bucks? Do you see the Bucks?
Yeah,
Oh, no,
the
I think
lucky Bucks.
we're talking about making the finals, right? They're right. Milwaukee's in the East, so like Dallas is in the West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So West, Lakers could come back. Miami is
But they're in the East
Phoenix,
too.
Phoenix.
yeah. Phoenix. Oh,
The
Phoenix.
Suns
Yeah.
could, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I feel like Golden State, like that's where I kind of wonder. Like, it's more like a long-term legacy thing, but it just had me wondering because all of a sudden I was thinking that this Warriors team kind of reminds me, like, not that I was alive for this, but the 88, 89 Lakers, who sort of were kind of on their final fumes with like that core of Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar before they sort of just kind of completely had to like rebuild and start over. So that's sort of where I'm kind of like wondering, like at this point, like is this kind of the like potential downfall, or not downfall, but like sort of the end of like where we see Golden State as a perennial like real contender.
I mean, it might be an end to this dynasty, right? But that's not to say that another great group of players is going to come and form another
Okay,
dynasty.
yeah, but that's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying for the Golden State core as we've known it.
For this
could
core,
be, yeah.
for
Of course,
the-
of course, in 10 years, another guy can come, right? Like, we don't know. I'm not saying like, of course, in 5 years, another dynasty might form. Like, that's not what I'm trying to ask.
when it comes to this particular core, I think these guys have at least 3 or 4 years left, at least.
Wait, you're saying, wow. So you think at age like 38, Steph Curry can still score 40 points in an NBA Finals game?
Yeah, that's how good he is. That like Steph Curry is Steph
Wow.
Curry for a reason.
I don't know about that. As good as he is, I would be very, very impressed if he's able to do it. If he's able to do what he's doing now, 4 years from now.
I mean, 4 years from now, I think he's basically going to be where LeBron is right now.
Wow. Oh yeah, but you still think he's going to be able to average 30 points a game at age 38?
Maybe
Yeah.
not 30, maybe not 30 points a game, but definitely enough to be competitive.
Well, he does play a
Yeah.
less like physical game than LeBron, right? It's like how Shaquille O'Neal used to take so many poundings in his position as a big center back in
Well,
the
he's been
day.
injured like a lot,
So-
right, over his career too. Steph Curry.
Are we really talking about taking physical poundings for NBA players? Honestly,
I mean,
Well, I
Shaquille
mean,
O'Neal.
Have you
it's
seen
the
amount of-
same sport where you touch someone and then they fall to the ground and flop and then cry to the referee.
Well,
I
it's
mean-
still like when you face a guy like Giannis, right? Like, and he bulldozes into you. That's all.
Yeah, like
Again,
Greg
again,
Williams had
again,
to take an ice
again.
bath after the game because it hurts. So he was
Again,
defending Giannis.
Again, basketball has a totally different skill set. You got to be fast, you got to be agile, you got to be tall, and you got to be able to shoot well. But taking physical poundings is not one of them.
I think
This
Steph
is-
Curry can still have those like 30, 40-point games, but I don't think it'll be like consistent. I think we'll see it like once every, I don't know, 5-10 games, and you'll start to see it
Wow.
slow down a little bit.
All right. You know what? Like, the only way to really resolve this now is like 4 years from now, we come back on this podcast and we see how Steph Curry is. And it's June, right? So if June of 2026, the Golden
Yeah.
State Warriors are still
Actually,
in the
yeah,
NBA
'cause-
Finals.
4 years ago, the Warriors were 3 days off of their last championship.
Yeah, okay, but 4 years ago, how old was Steph Curry? How old was Klay Thompson then?
Steph Curry was still in his 30s.
Well, he had just turned 30, right? That's not really the same as 34,
Yeah.
35. That's different, right? So, anyways, yeah, this was just like a fun discussion. I was just kind of thinking, like, how much of a parallel can we draw to kind of other teams? Because it kind of just makes me wonder, like, is this kind of it for Golden State? Like, this is why everyone really wants them to really kind of succeed this time, because they kind of know that probably this might be the last time in a while that they get to go back with Steph sort of leading the way as the best player on that team. That's sort of where I'm kind of wondering if like this is sort of it. Like in terms of, I mean, obviously I'm sure he'll be back for a couple more years, but will Golden State be able to get back to the finals with this type of play going forward? So it'll be interesting to kind of see. But anyways, yeah, I guess this will sort of conclude our basketball segment of today's episode. Obviously, Game 5 is Monday night, and we'll definitely discuss that. And I guess we'll be on the air for potential Game 6 because that's next Thursday. That's officially there. So will there be a Game 7? We won't know until Game 6 next Thursday. So who knows? But until
right.
then, yeah, we'll be back then to discuss the NBA then and all the news that's happened since then. Have a
All
good
right.
one, everyone.
Go Celtics, everyone. Peace.
Go Celtics.
Golden State in 7.